The champagne was already in my hand. Everyone was smiling, glasses raised, music playing. Then I saw his eyes, not celebratory, not happy, focused, cold. I didn't know why my hand shook, but I switched glasses anyway. 10 minutes later, someone else collapsed, and my son-in-law went pale. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Edward Collins. I'm 62 years old. We were celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary in Savannah, Georgia. I never imagined that night would expose the most dangerous person in our own family. Anniversary parties are supposed to feel warm, loud, clumsy, full of laughter that overlaps and conversations that never quite finish. Ours did. 30 years of marriage, friends flying in from out of state, my daughter fussing over table settings, my wife glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Everything looked perfect. And that's what makes it dangerous, because danger rarely announces itself. It hides inside smiles. The venue was a restored colonial house near the river, soft lights strung across the ceiling, white tablecloths, a pianist playing something gentle in the corner. I remember thinking, we made it. 30 years, cancer scares, financial disasters, buried parents, raised a child, we survived. My wife squeezed my hand as guests gathered around us. You did good, she whispered. I smiled. Then the champagne arrived, tall flutes, clear glass, golden bubbles racing upward like tiny fireworks. My son-in-law, Mark, stood near the tray. He was already holding 2 glasses. That should have been nothing, but something about the way he stood made my stomach tight, too still, too focused, not celebratory, waiting. He spotted me across the room and smiled, a little too quickly. He walked over and held out a glass. For you, he said. 30 years deserves the best. I thanked him, took the glass, but I didn't drink. I don't know why. I wasn't suspicious yet. It wasn't a thought. It was a feeling, a prickle between my shoulders, the kind you get when someone stands too close behind you and you don't hear them approach. I glanced down at the champagne. Perfectly normal, clear, no smell, no residue, and still my hand shook. Mark noticed. His smile tightened. You okay? He asked. Fine, I said, and that's when I saw his eyes. They weren't on me, they were on the glass, watching, waiting. That's when instinct took over. I turned slightly, laughed at something someone said behind me, and without making a show of it, I switched glasses with the one sitting unattended on the nearby table. Same shape, same bubbles, different fate. Mark didn't notice, or maybe he did, because his smile flickered, just for a second. The toast began. Everyone raised their glasses. My wife leaned into me. To us, she said softly. I clinked my glass with hers, still didn't drink. Across the room, Mark lifted his own glass. Didn't take his eyes off me. The pianist paused. The room quieted. I raised my glass higher. So did Mark. And then he drank, not a sip, a full swallow. The color drained from his face instantly. His hand went to the table, hard, the glass shattered. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. Then Mark staggered. His knees buckled. He collapsed face first onto the floor. The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Someone screamed. My daughter ran toward him. I stood there, frozen, because I knew. I knew exactly what had happened, and so did Mark. As he lay on the floor, gasping, his eyes locked onto mine. Not confused, not panicked, terrified, because he realized I was still standing. Paramedics arrived quickly, too quickly, almost like someone had already been waiting for them. They loaded Mark onto a stretcher. My daughter cried. My wife clutched my arm. What happened? She whispered. I shook my head. I don't know, I lied, but I was already replaying everything. The glasses. The look, the waiting, the collapse. Mark wasn't the victim. He was the mistake. The party was over. Police took statements. Everyone was shaken. They asked if Mark had any medical conditions. No one mentioned poison. No one mentioned drugs, but I saw the paramedic slip something into a small evidence bag. I saw the way the officer looked at me when I mentioned the glass swap casually. Too attentive, too interested. That night, my wife and I returned home. She went straight to bed, exhausted. Emotionally wrecked, I stayed up, sitting at the kitchen table. The untouched champagne glass in front of me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smelled it, faint, bitter, chemical. I didn't touch it again. I covered it, and I waited. The phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice, calm, measured. "This is Detective Aaron Feldman," he said. "We need to speak with you about what happened tonight." My pulse quickened. Of course, I said. There was a pause. Then did you switch glasses with your son-in-law? The room went cold. I started. We have video, he said gently, and witnesses. Another pause, and we found something in Mark's blood. My grip tightened on the phone. What did you find? I asked. Silence. Then a sedative, he said. One strong enough to incapacitate an adult male. My mouth went dry. And he continued, the dosage suggests it was meant for someone else. The weight of his words pressed down on my chest. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Another pause. Because, he said, we just checked Mark's phone. My heart pounded. And he searched something earlier today, the detective said. I swallowed. What did he search? The detective exhaled slowly. How long does it take for this drug to knock someone unconscious? The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the champagne glass untouched, the house silent. And for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about what Mark had done. I was thinking about why, because whatever he planned didn't end when he collapsed. It had just begun. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside my wife, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, wondering how close I came to never hearing it again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's face as he collapsed, not shocked, not confused, afraid. That fear wasn't from the drug, it was from realization. He hadn't expected to be the one on the floor. The detective arrived the next morning. Detective Feldman didn't wear intimidation like armor. No raised voice, no threats, just facts. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, notebook closed, coffee untouched. I want to be clear, he said. You are not a suspect. That didn't comfort me. Then why are you here? I asked. He studied my face. Because you did something most people wouldn't have survived. I didn't respond. He continued. The sedative in Mark's system was dissolved in alcohol, specifically champagne, a dose calibrated by body weight. I frowned. You're saying it was calculated, he finished, not impulsive. Not experimental. My stomach tightened. That means, I said slowly, he knew exactly who would drink it. Feldman nodded, and he prepared it in advance. The kitchen felt smaller. He searched the drug dosage online, Feldman added, multiple times over several weeks. I stared at the table. My daughter had married a man who practiced poisoning her father. And there's more, Feldman said quietly. He slid a printed photo toward me. It was a still image from security footage. Mark. In the venue's prep area, alone, holding a small vial, my throat went dry. He arrived early, Feldman said, before the staff, before the caterers. I clenched my jaw. Why? I asked. Feldman leaned back. That's what we're trying to determine. The hospital called later that afternoon. Mark was conscious, stable, and asking for me. My daughter begged me to go. He's scared, she said. He keeps saying he didn't mean for this to happen. I looked at her, my child, trying to reconcile the man she loved with the man who almost killed me. I'll go, I said, but not alone. Mark looked small in the hospital bed, pale, shaking, IV lines in his arms. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Dad, he started. I raised my hand. Don't, I said quietly. My daughter squeezed his hand. Tell him, she whispered. Tell him what you told me. Mark swallowed hard. I panicked, he said. I made a mistake. That wasn't a mistake, I replied calmly. That was preparation. He flinched. I never meant to hurt you, he said quickly. I just needed time. Time for what? I asked. He hesitated. My daughter leaned forward. Mark, she said. He closed his eyes. There are debts, he said. Big ones. My pulse quickened. What kind of debts? He stared at the ceiling. The kind that don't forgive late payments. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Who? I asked. He shook his head. I can't say. I stood. That's not good enough. He grabbed my wrist weakly. They said you'd try to stop it, he whispered. They said you'd never agree. Agree to what? I demanded. He looked at me. They wanted you gone. The room went silent. My daughter gasped. What? She said. Mark's voice cracked. They said you controlled everything. The trust, the property, the inheritance. My vision blurred. They said if you died naturally, heart attack, stroke, everything would pass cleanly. I pulled my hand free. You were going to kill me for money. He shook his head violently. No, I was buying time. If you were unconscious, if something happened, they could delay, they'd stop watching me. I laughed once, short, bitter. You poisoned me to protect yourself. He broke down. I didn't know what else to do. I looked at my daughter. She was crying silently. Who told you to do this? I asked him. He hesitated too long. That was answer enough. That evening, Detective Feldman called again. "We searched Mark's phone more deeply," he said. "He's been communicating with someone through encrypted messaging." My heart sank. "Who?" Feldman paused. "A woman," I frowned. "What woman?" he exhaled. "She uses a burner identity, but the payment trails are clear." My grip tightened. "Payments. She's been transferring money into Mark's account regularly." I closed my eyes. And she attended the party." The floor seemed to tilt. "Who?" I whispered. Feldman didn't answer immediately. "Sir," he said carefully, "how long have you known your wife's best friend?" My blood ran cold. 30 years, I said. Feldman's voice was steady. She was seated closest to the champagne table. She moved freely through the prep area, and her fingerprints were found on the vial. The name hit me like a punch. Linda, the woman who cried at my wedding, held my daughter when she was born, called my wife every Sunday. I sat down hard. "No," I whispered. Feldman's voice softened. "I'm sorry." That night, I poured the remaining champagne down the sink. Every bubble felt like a lie. I sat alone in the dark living room, thinking about every memory, every laugh, every shared holiday. How long had Linda been planning this? How long had she been watching me? My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You weren't supposed to survive." Another message followed instantly. "Now everything changes." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Then a final message: "Check your wife's old jewelry box." My breath caught because there was only one thing inside that box, the document that decided everything after my death. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just about Mark. This was about control, and someone I trusted had been waiting 30 years to take it. I didn't open the jewelry box right away. I just sat there, phone glowing in my hand, the message still staring back at me. "Check your wife's old jewelry box." Linda's words, or whoever was using her phone. The house felt different now, not quiet, but watched. Every shadow in the hallway felt intentional. Every creak felt rehearsed. I stood slowly and walked toward the bedroom, each step measured, controlled. The jewelry box sat where it always had, on my wife's dresser, right beside her old perfume bottle. I hadn't opened it since her last birthday. My hand hovered over the lid, then I lifted it. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Earrings, a bracelet I bought her on our 10th anniversary, a thin gold chain she wore every Sunday. Then I saw it. The velvet lining had been cut, cleanly, carefully. Beneath it, an envelope, thick, yellowed, legal-sized, my name written on it. Not Linda's handwriting, my wife's. My chest tightened. I slid it out slowly and sat on the edge of the bed. Inside were documents, property deeds, trust amendments, a notarized letter, and a second envelope, smaller, marked, "If something happens to me." My hands shook. I opened it. "Edward, if you're reading this, then someone you trusted broke my promise. I didn't tell you sooner because I wanted one thing above all else, to keep our family together while I still could. But Linda knows everything, and she's been waiting for her moment." My breath hitched. Waiting, 30 years. The letter continued. "She helped me with the trust paperwork years ago. I thought she was protecting us, but I overheard her on the phone one night, talking about timing, about Mark, about using debt to control him. About you." My vision blurred. My wife had known, and she never told me because she was afraid of tearing the family apart, afraid of what Linda would do. The letter ended with one final line: "If she ever makes a move, don't confront her alone." I laughed bitterly. Too late. The doorbell rang. I froze, then it rang again. Slow, patient, like whoever stood outside knew I wasn't going anywhere. I checked the security monitor. Linda stood on my porch, calm, composed, holding a casserole dish, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't orchestrated the poisoning of my champagne at my anniversary party. I opened the door. She smiled. "There you are," she said softly. I was worried. I stepped aside. She walked in without hesitation. Her eyes scanned the living room, not nervously, but evaluating. She set the dish down. "I thought you might not be eating much," she said. "You always forget when you're stressed." I turned to face her. "How long?" I asked. She tilted her head. "How long what? How long have you been planning this?" I asked. Her smile didn't fade. "Edward," she said gently, "this isn't the time for drama." I held up the letter, my wife's handwriting. Her eyes flicked to it, just once, but that was enough. Her expression changed, not fear, not guilt, annoyance. "She left that?" Linda asked. "She did," I said. Linda sighed and sat down on the couch like we were about to discuss the weather. "I hoped she wouldn't," she said. My heart pounded. You pushed Mark, I said. You funded his debts. You told him I was in the way. She crossed her legs calmly. I gave him options, she replied. He chose poorly. He drugged my drink. He miscalculated, she said. That's on him. I stared at her. You would have let me die, she met my eyes. Yes. The word landed cleanly. No hesitation, no apology. Yes, she repeated, because you never understood how much you controlled. I laughed once. Controlled what? Everything, she said. The house, the trust, the future. I stepped closer. You were my wife's friend, she nodded. And I loved her, she said. But love doesn't pay debts. My jaw tightened. So you decided to kill me. No, she said calmly. I decided to replace you. My phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it. Answer it, she said. You'll want to hear this. I picked it up. Detective Feldman, I answered. Sir, he said urgently, we just had a breakthrough. Linda smiled faintly. Put it on speaker. I did. Mark just confessed, Feldman said. He gave us everything. Linda exhaled. I told him he would, she murmured. Feldman continued. He says Linda planned this for years. She controlled his finances, threatened to ruin him. Linda clapped softly once. Good boy, she said. Feldman's voice sharpened. Sir, is Linda with you right now? I swallowed. Yes. Get out of the house, Feldman said immediately. Do not engage her. Linda laughed. Oh, Aaron, she said, you always were slow. The line went dead. My phone went dark. No signal. Linda stood. You see, she said softly, I prepared for every version of tonight. She walked toward the door. Mark was disposable, she continued. But you were always the real obstacle. I felt my pulse pounding. What now? I asked. She turned back. Now, she said, I make sure you don't change anything. She reached into her purse, slowly, deliberately, pulled out a small syringe, clear liquid inside. This time, she said, I won't rely on anyone else. My blood ran cold. I backed away. You won't get away with this, I said. She smiled. I already have. She stepped forward, and in that moment, the front door burst open. Detective Feldman rushed in with 2 officers behind him. Drop it, he shouted. Linda froze. The syringe slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. She looked at me, not angry, disappointed. I warned you, she said. The officers cuffed her. As they led her out, she leaned close to me. You think this ends here, she whispered. You think the trust makes you safe. Her eyes locked onto mine. You have no idea how many people were waiting for you to disappear. She was gone. The house fell silent. I sank onto the couch, shaking, alive, but the night wasn't finished. Detective Feldman stayed behind. There's something else, he said quietly. My heart sank. What? He handed me his phone. A message just received from an unknown number. You stopped one move. You didn't stop the game. I looked up at him. What does that mean? Feldman's jaw tightened. It means, he said, Linda wasn't working alone. The screen lit up again. Another message. 30 years is a long time to wait, and we're very patient. I stared at the words, realizing the truth. This wasn't just a family betrayal. It was a network, and I had just exposed myself. At my own anniversary party, I survived the first attempt, but the people who wanted me gone were still watching. The house didn't feel like mine anymore, not after Linda was taken away. Not after the police lights washed the walls blue and red. Not after I learned how long betrayal can sit quietly at your table and pass you the salt. Detective Feldman stayed until dawn. He didn't rush, didn't push. He understood something had cracked open inside me that wouldn't close easily. Everything we found backs your wife's letter, he said softly. Linda manipulated Mark for years. She isolated him financially, pushed him deeper into debt, made herself the only solution. I nodded slowly. And the others? I asked. He didn't answer right away. That's what we're still mapping, he said. She moved money through shell accounts, charities, trusts. She wasn't just targeting you. I let that sink in. So this wasn't personal, I said. Feldman shook his head. It was strategic. That somehow hurt more. Because it meant the love, the memories, the shared decades. None of that mattered to her. I was just a gate, and she wanted what was behind it. My daughter came the next morning. She looked smaller, like the world had shifted and left her without footing. She sat across from me at the kitchen table where Mark once joked and laughed and talked about future vacations. Now his name sat between us like something fragile and broken. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear to you, Dad, I didn't know. I reached across the table and took her hands. I know, I said, and I meant it, because betrayal has a smell and she didn't carry it. She cried then, not loudly, just quietly, the kind of crying that comes when something fundamental breaks. "What happens to Mark?" she asked. I took a breath. "He confessed," I said. "He'll face charges, but the truth matters, and the truth will protect you." She nodded slowly. "And Linda, she'll never see daylight the same way again." My daughter looked away. "She was like an aunt to me," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's how predators survive." The days that followed were a blur: statements, paperwork, lawyers calling, but one thing didn't change: the trust. The document Linda wanted me dead for was now locked, reviewed, and sealed. But more importantly, it was changed. I rewrote it myself, not out of fear, out of clarity. I redistributed everything: safeguards, oversight, conditions. No single person could ever control it again. Linda's 30-year plan died with one signature. Mark tried to call me from jail. I didn't answer, not because I hated him, but because I didn't need his voice to heal. Some apologies arrived too late to matter. The trial came faster than expected. Linda never denied what she did. That surprised everyone, but not me. She wasn't ashamed. She believed she was right. When she took the stand, she looked directly at me, not pleading, not apologetic, proud. "I waited," she said. "I planned. I acted." The courtroom went silent. "And I would have succeeded," she added, "if not for one mistake." The prosecutor asked, "What mistake?" Linda smiled faintly. "Underestimating instinct." She looked at me again. "You trusted your hands when they shook," she said. "That's why you're still here." She was sentenced that afternoon. As they led her away, she didn't struggle. She just watched me, as if she wanted to see whether I finally understood. I did. After the trial, I went home and opened the last thing my wife had left me: a small notebook tucked into the back of the closet. Her handwriting, gentle, careful. Inside were dates, observations, and one page I hadn't read before. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't protect you forever. I tried, I really did, but the best protection isn't secrecy, it's courage." I closed the notebook and sat in silence. My wife knew, she saw it, and she chose love over fear until the end. Weeks passed, then months. The house slowly became quiet again, but not haunted, peaceful, earned. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I poured a glass of champagne, just one, not to celebrate, to remember. I raised it toward the window. "To 30 years," I whispered. Then I set it down and didn't drink, because survival teaches you some habits should never return. People ask me later how I knew to switch the glasses, how I sensed it. I never had a good answer. I still don't. But I know this: your body knows danger before your mind does. Trust it. Because sometimes the difference between life and death is a trembling hand and a choice that feels foolish until it saves you. At my 30th anniversary party, someone tried to end my life quietly. Instead, I learned who truly loved me, who waited 30 years to destroy me, and why instinct is the only witness that never lies. And tonight, I'm still here, alive, watching, and finally free.